Let's talk about nutrition now from the standpoint of quality of food. So, whether it be plants or animals, we know there's different categories such as organic, grass fed, grass finished, and we can get into even soil quality, how far that food has traveled, and if that's how that impacts the nutrition of it. So, up until this point, when we've talked about, say, the top nutrient dense foods, we haven't gotten into the specifics of the quality of where that came from. So let's touch on that part now and get into some of the nuance there.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. If we start with animal foods, generally animals that are raised in their ancestral environment are the ones that will have the highest nutrient content. So for 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 ruminant animals like cows and sheep, that would be on pasture, right? So they evolved eating grass and other types of plants that are found on pasture, and so they will often end up having higher levels of nutrients as a result of eating those foods versus like confinement raised cattle that are eating grains and who knows what else. Like there's been some pretty shocking um, reports of other, all kinds of stuff that gets into their feed, candy, gummy bears, certainly antibiotic residue or other stuff like that. Um, and then with fish, it's often the case, not always, that wild caught fish will have higher levels of nutrients than farm raised fish, and certainly with poultry, pasture raised poultry will have higher levels of nutrients than poultry raised in cages, and same is true for monogastrics like pigs as well. With plants, it's there's two considerations. So one is organic versus conventional, with pesticides and herbicides. Another, though, that's actually even more important is local versus industrial. If we use the term industrial to refer to eating a banana in Wisconsin in the wintertime, that banana traveled for a very long distance to get to your plate. Or even just eating a food that you could normally find in Wisconsin in the summer, in the winter, that traveled from a very long distance, or eating a food in Wisconsin that you can actually buy in Wisconsin during that season, but that still, because of how our food economy works now, was shipped from the Central Valley in California several thousand miles away before it hit your plate. And the reason that that's important is that we know that the nutrient density or value of a food starts declining immediately after it's harvested. And then things like how that food is stored will affect it as well. So if it's not exposed to light, so for example, it gets harvested in the Central Valley, it goes into the back of goes into a temporary holding warehouse with no light, and then it goes into the back of a truck, and it's trucked 3,000 miles across the country. It goes into another holding warehouse. Then it goes into the back of a truck again. It goes in the back of a grocery store. Um, it could be a week or more has passed before it gets on, into the store, and then you buy it. It goes into your dark fridge, and sits in the drawer there for several days, and then you eat it. Now it's been losing nutritional value that entire time, and the studies have shown that loss of nutritional value can be profound. It can be 50% or more for certain nutrients. So the ideal scenario, if we could all do it, would be we're growing our food in our backyard and our produce, and we go out there and grab a tomato off the vine and eat it for lunch. And for those that are fortunate enough to be able to do that, that's phenomenal. And of course, anyone who's eaten a tomato that has just been literally picked off the vine can tell you that it really is you could call it a completely different food than a tomato that you go and buy in the grocery store that is waxy and pale and has probably was picked before it was ripe and was on a truck for has been off the vine for many many days. So those kind of taste like water and cardboard, whereas a tomato off the vine is you really understand why it's a fruit. It can be incredibly sweet and almost overpowering in terms of its taste. Second best is farmers markets. So, the most food at a farmer's market was recently picked. The farmer, if the market is on a Saturday and they're coming from within 100 miles away, they might have picked that food on a Friday and brought it up to the market on a Saturday. And again, you can taste the difference in almost all cases, whether it's a fruit or a vegetable or something else. And then there are, of course, some grocery stores, typically natural health, stores that are doing a better job of sourcing produce locally. You can often see on the label in the produce section, it might say like apples. Apples. If you're in Oregon, it might say apples from the Willamette Valley, or from some other part of the state, and you know that they're coming from local. Of course, you don't know when they were harvested, but there's a decent chance that they're fresher and were harvested more recently than if you're buying produce that says it's from Mexico or Thailand or something like that. If you're buying a mango, then you're going to have that problem. So I would say that local trumps organic when it comes to nutrient density. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy organic or you shouldn't care about that, but I'm saying if we just are considering in a vacuum the nutrient density of produce, it's more important when it was harvested than whether it's organic or conventional. Now, having said that, there is a lot of research suggesting that organic produce is higher in nutrients than conventional produce. So the optimal approach would be to buy local and organic. That way, you're maximizing the nutrient density of your food from both of those perspectives. And of course, there are other reasons to buy organic produce and organically raised meat above and beyond just nutrient density. It's in that case, in meat, it's the lack of antibiotics and hormones and GMOs. In the case of produce, it's the absence of GMOs and pesticides and herbicides and other compounds like that. So that's how it breaks down.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Most recent research suggests that over 90% of Americans fall short of the optimal intake of not just one, but several micronutrients. This is also true in other developed countries around the world. So there definitely has been a decline.